Hey guys, welcome to 0.8 Strings. So in this lesson, what we're going to do is work with strings in more detail than we have before. We're going to learn how to refer to strings by index and generate substrings. That's smaller parts of strings. We're also going to work with some string methods. That's little functions that basically deal with strings specifically. Find, rfind, replace, count, len, upper, and lower. So let's begin. So far with strings, what we've learned is, well, we've learned how to repeat them with the multiplication symbol, right? So if we type ABC, right, times 3, right, we would get three of those concatenated with each other. We've also learned how to loop through them with a for statement, right? So we would type something like for letter, whatever variable that we want to take each string in A, B, C, D, E. We've learned concatenation, right? So whenever we use the plus operator between two strings, it just puts them together. And finally, we've learned how to convert other data types like integers or floats to strings using the str method. So today we're going to work with a whole pile of other things that are going to help us really expand our vocabulary and ability to work with strings. So here's a little function that will save you from a violent coding death at critical moments in your programming career. In other words, this is important. And it's a built-in function called len, right? So you pass len an argument that's a string, where x is a string, and it will tell you how long that string is in number of characters, right? So if we type len, hello, then it should tell us, well, I've got 5 characters in hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So if we type len 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? Then we should get 9, right? Because that string is 9 characters long. Okay, then that brings us to the next section here, string indexes. So each character in a string is numbered or has a position relative to the start or the end of the string. A position in a list of letters, in this case, has a special name in Python. We call this an index, where the first character has index 0, the next has 1 and 2, and so forth. So, right, if we have the string hello, if s is equal to hello, then s with square brackets, sub I, where I represents the index, is equal to the following. So here's our string. I've just made a table where we have the letters of the string in the top row. Then we have some various indexes here. So h is, we could refer to the very first character by typing s0 like this in square brackets. This would return h. And then the next one would be s1. That would give us the next character in the string. And so forth, right? All the way to 4, which as you know, is 1 less than the length of hello, right? So this corresponds, right, to how things work in computers, where, computers tend to start from 0, right? So our first position is 0, and our last position is always 1 less than the actual length, okay, of the string, which in this case is 4. So note also how we can use negative indexes to refer to parts of the string from the right side. So if you were to type s of -1, okay, what that would do is return the character on the far right side, which in this case would be O. All right, s of -2 would mean second from the far right, so that would give us our L, and so forth. As you go backward, okay, basically you're saying I want the next one over, but from the right side. Okay, and so this is really helpful when we want to refer to a character that we know is a certain distance away from the right side of the string, right? So positive indexes from 0, right, refer to the left, and negative refer to the right. Now in Python, when you refer to part of a string, it's called a slice. And each of these expressions, S0 through S4, which really evaluate to H, E, L, L, and O, they are examples of slices. And so let's try this. Well, let's go over here and we'll set S to hello. Right, so type this in with me. And now let's type each of these just to see how they evaluate. So we've typed S0, then we should see, make sure you use square brackets, right? So S0 square bracket, and you should get just the first character, which is h, right? And again, if we use s -1, this will give us the character on the far right side of the string, which in this case is o. But let's now try typing s5, which we know is actually longer, right? It's actually further right than we can go. And you'll notice we get this, an index out of range. So this is an index error. This happens when you mess up the value that goes inside a string or a list, when you're trying to reference something that does not exist. Okay, so now if you want to refer to part of a string that's longer than one character, we can use two parameters in the brackets. So let's experiment for a minute here using a and b separated by a colon. So if we leave, okay, we'll leave s, which we know is already hello, right? We've got s set as hello. What we could do is choose some values for a and b and see what we get. Well, let's try this. So we'll take s0:2. Okay, let's see what we get. So notice how we got h and e, right? So we actually got the first two characters in the string. Well, how about if we type s0:3? And this time we got the starting character all the way up to the third character. Okay, let's try again one more time. s0:4. See what slice we get. So here we get, right, the opposite of heaven. We get HELL, which are the first four characters. And so what's important here to recognize is that the slice is saying this. It's saying, I want you to give me the string that starts with this index and goes all the way up to, but does not include this index at the end. So this is just like the range object that we've worked with, right? Because remember, at range, we could start, right? We could create a range by giving a starting value and saying the number that we wanted to end at, but not include, right? So we could do something like that. List range 1, 10 would give us the numbers from 1 to 9. Well, in this case, it's the same thing, right? Except 0, in this case, is our starting number, right? Is our starting index. And this is the last one, but does not include the last one. So that's how to create a substring or a slice with a start and a stop value. Now, let's say that you want to create a string that starts at a particular point and goes all the way to the end. Well, you can omit B. And what this does is just give us everything from A onward. So let's say that we wanted to say, we'll start string S, which we know is hello, but we'll start it at the second character, right? So that would be index 1, and we go to the end. So we type 1:, and this gives us everything from E onward. Okay, and you can do the same thing. You can do the same thing kind of backward, where you can specify a stopping value and take everything from the left to that point. Okay, in other words, I want everything up to B, but not B in this case, because remember, our stop value never includes that character. So let's say that we wanted to print from this hello variable, we wanted to print basically everything up to the second L. We wanted to print hell like this. Okay, well, we could do that by typing S bracket, and then again, we'll type everything up to, but not including O, which we know is as index 4, right? So this will give us basically the first 4 characters is what it does. So you can also use negative indexes when you're doing this in either of these cases. So for example, let's say we wanted to refer to the slice that goes all the way from the beginning, okay, to the second last character. Well, we could use this version, but for B we could put -2, right? So we could put colon, that means from the beginning up until, but not including the character at position -2, which is 2 from the right side, right? So that gives us HEL because the second L has index -2. Or let's say we wanted to go, we want to do the opposite, right? And say we wanted to go from basically the third last character all the way to the far right, right? So we could, for A, we could include, say, -3 as our starting point. That would be the third character from the right side all the way to the right side, right? And this is going to give us the last three letters, LLO, because this is -3, this is -2, and of course O is -1. So one thing that's kind of nice about working with slices like this is that they're a little more forgiving. You don't get index errors, you know, if you were to type something that's out of bounds when you're using two bounds or an open end or an open beginning like this. So for example, let's say we typed, you know, S, and we went from the beginning to the character at position 20. Right? Well, what that's going to do is just give us everything that exists within the string up into 20. We actually are done after 4, right? But in this case, it's not giving us an error. And this works out a little bit well because it helps us to be a little more flexible with how we handle these strings in our code. So let's look at example 1. Given the string S equals A, B, C, D, E, F, G, create the following slices in 2 ways if possible. So let's go ahead and set S to this new string. So we'll type S equals A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, and now for part 1 here, we were asked to basically create the slice C, which we know is the 3rd character, right? But we count from 0, which means A is 0, B is 1, and C is actually 2, right? So to do this, we could type S index 2. Right? That gives us our C. How could we do this another way? Well, we could refer to C from the right side, right? So we know that G is actually -1, right? So we could go -1, -2, 3, 4, and C is 5, right? So we could type S with -5, and we also get C. So let's do the same thing now for the letter G. In fact, I'd encourage you to pause the video for a moment and do it yourself. Okay, so let's do G. Well, of course, G is the very last character, right? And one way to get a quick read on how long the string, right, is where you could use the len function and put string S in there. And we're told that, right, that the string is 7 characters long, right? And so to refer to the very last letter, very last character, what we can do is reference the one below this, which is 6, right? And so that gives us our last character G, right? We could also, of course, just refer to this from the right side using -1. That gives us the character on the right, right? Which is also G. So let's just take a minute to document these. We'll put them in the note. This was example 1, slices. And first we had to set S to S, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? And then the first one was C, right? So in order to write a slice for C, we typed S2, and then we did S -5, which brings us from the right side. And then we did, for G, we did what? 6 and -1, right? So 6 and -1. Go ahead and pause the video and update your note so you have those responses. Okay, so for number 3, we were going to try to find a slice that equals C, D, E, F. So go ahead and take a moment and see if you can type it in the terminal yourself. Okay, so hopefully you had a crack at that. So here's the solution. So if you were to use S2, 6, well, this would refer to the starting point is C, and the cutoff point would be literally the last character, right? Because it gives us the one up into, but not including the last character. You could also refer to that last character, by the way, using a negative index, right? Well, F has index -2, right? So we could type -2 in here. Or could we? Remember, this is the stop character, right? So if we were to press enter, we would actually miss the F because it's not going to include that. So of course, really what we need to do is use -1, right? That gets us right to the very last character, but not including the last character. So we'll just add those to the note here. S2, 6 and S2, -1. All right, the next one is C, D, E, F, G. So again, pause the video, do it yourself. So for this one, all we're really doing is adding one more character, right? So we could just literally put each of these, right? We could increase this one at the very least. We could type S2, 7, and that would get us everything. But of course, we're also being asked to just start at C and go all the way to the end, right? So that means we could type S and go and press 2 and then colon and just leave it open, right? Because that would get us the rest of the string after index 2. So let's add these to the note. Okay, how about A, B, C, D, E, F? All right, and what I'd like you to do at this point is just try to fill in these answers yourself as an exercise. Pause the video for a minute, and when I resume, I will paste the answers so that you can see them. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to try that. So here are the answers. Okay, so before we move on to the last parameter, I just want to show you one more thing you can do. And I've already typed this in here while the video is paused. S with a colon but no end or start or stop parameters inside the slice. What this really does is just gives you the whole slice. This is important for what we're going to be learning next. So we can add a third parameter to the end, right? That would look like this. We'll call it C. So if we type A colon B and then another colon C, then what that does is it allows us to say if we're going to skip any characters or change the direction we're going to go. So if you set C to 2, that means you're going to go every 2 characters. In other words, you're going to go every other character. And that's what this slice will contain. If you set it to 3, we're going to take every 3rd character. Okay, so let's look at that real quick. So if we typed S, right, and then we type in a colon and then another colon, that means we have no A or B. So we're just going to take the whole string and we type a 2 in there, and then basically that means we're just going to take every other character in the string, right? And again, if we did that with a 3, then we would have every 3rd character, right? So now we can also go in reverse order, right? We could type colon colon -1, and that would give us the string backward. Okay, so now you could optionally, create a start and a stop value within this, right? Like if we were to take every other character starting from B, then we would just want to make sure to set our start value at 1, right? And then maybe we don't need an ending value, but then we could put a 2 at the end, and that would give us every other character starting from B, right? B, D, F. Okay, so this concludes part 1 of the lesson. You can complete assignment 0.8a on Replit. Okay, so for part 2 of this video, we're going to begin with this idea of immutability of strings. So something that's immutable is something that cannot be changed, that will not be changed, and will never be changed. Whereas something that is mutable, right, that is something that is changeable. So in Python, once a string is created, you can never modify it. It can never be changed. You can use a slice, okay? You can refer to part of the string, but every time you do that, okay, you are getting a new modified string. In other words, whenever here we referenced S, right, parts of S, notice how we always got part of S, right? This was not actually changing S at all in any situation, right? We were just getting different parts of S returned. So that's something that's important to remember, right? So if we typed like X equals Voldemort, and right, if we print X, then of course we're going to see Voldemort. But if we print a slice, right, part of X, which we can do by just by including some square brackets, and we'll go from -4 over, then we're just going to get the last 4 letters in this case, mort, but we still are going to get the whole string if we just still print X. So the important thing here to recognize is that if you want to keep track of a slice, okay, you have to do something with it. You have to print it, or you have to assign it to a variable. So if we said y equals x, and then we went from 1 to 3 or to 4, right, then now y would contain part of Voldemort. It would contain old, right? But if we went y comma x, then it's going to print each one, right? Old Voldemort. And I didn't even plan this. That's kind of hilarious. In any case, right? So use variables to keep track of slices if you want to actually keep, right, part of that slice somewhere. and use it later in your program. Okay, next we're going to look at a couple string methods. Now, first of all, a method is a function that's only used on a specific data type or a collection of data types. And so these typically have functionality that's useful only for that particular data type. In other words, these string methods find and rfind can only be used on strings because they function on strings. Now, methods are called differently than functions, right? So the len function that we used before, or the print function, right? You always type the name of the function and then put brackets and then put the argument inside, put the thing that you want the function to work with inside. But methods are different. We attach them to the end of the object on which you want to invoke the method. Right? So, right, you've used the lower and upper, maybe the lower function so far, right? In one or two of your assignments, right? But let's look at now the find method. So the find method returns the index of the first occurrence of string x within the parent string, and -1 if that string is not found, where x is the string that we're looking for. Okay, so let's see how this is used, right? So example 1 says, find the substring dog within walk my dog, right? So if we type this into the terminal, and I'm just going to copy and paste this, feel free to do the same, right? Then, and press enter, then what it's going to do, what we're saying here is we're going to, on the string walk my dog, we're going to type .find, so this is a method. We're going to find this string inside this original parent string, right? And so notice how we get 8, right, from doing this. What this is telling us is if we count across to index 8, we should find the beginning of dog. It's saying we found dog. I found dog. This dog in your string, it starts at index 8. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Don't forget to count the spaces, right? So D is index 8 and dog was found there. So one thing to note here is that it's only going to give you the first occurrence of dog, okay, that index. In other words, if we typed walk my dog to the dog park, right, and then .find, and then find dog, then this is still going to give us 8 even though there's another dog there, right? Now let's say we wanted to find the index of this dog, the one on the right. Well, what we could do in that case is use the rfind method, okay? So we could type, well, let's just go in here and we'll just insert an R, okay? And what you'll notice is now it's giving us the dog, the index of dog, from the right-hand side, right? And now it's not a negative index, it's still the index from the beginning, right? So this would be 19 characters over, this D in this case. So let's just go ahead and document these into our note. We'll call this find and rfind, right? And so we'll just paste this first one, and we'll say returns 8, and the second one we'll just cut and paste this as well, and this one rfind returns 19. Okay, so we've got those both documented. So you can go ahead now and pause the video and complete assignments B and C for section 0.8. All right, welcome back. So let's look at string methods, replace and count. So replace is just like the function in Microsoft Word, right? If you have a word in a chunk of text and you want to replace it with another one, well, you can use this function, this method. Here's how it works, right? So you tack it on to the end of the string that you want to go through and replace, and then you type in replace, and the first parameter is whatever word you want to get rid of, and the second one is the new word you want to replace it with. Okay, and so what this will do is just replace all occurrences of old with new. And you can even limit the number of times you want it to do that by including a third parameter, count. So let's look at this little example down here. So in this example, I gave you this little bit of text that says go Habs go. So clearly this is not right. and we need to fix this string and replace Habs with Leafs, right? So let's just write a little program to do this. Let's grab this and we'll cut and paste, put this into the terminal, and we'll just store it in the variable team, okay, with quotes, and we'll press enter. And now let's replace Habs with Leafs. So what we can do is type team.replace, replace, and now we need to type in the string we want to get rid of, which is definitely Habs, and we'll put Leafs in there. And now it says go Leafs go. Yeah, that's much better. Now let's just take a look at the variable team, right? So if we were to print team, hey, now wait a minute. Why are we getting go Habs go again? Didn't we just replace Habs with Leafs? Well, remember, right, strings are immutable. In other words, this replace method doesn't work the way you might think. It doesn't actually go to the original variable, team, and change this string. It just returns or evaluates. It gives you a new string, right? So you could print this if you want or assign it to a variable, but if you go back to your first string, it's going to be the same. So you have to remember, right? If you want to keep track of this, assign it something. So for example, we could assign this to the variable fixed. Actually, before we type that, press the up arrow a couple times. There we go, to bring up the second last command. And now at the beginning, just type in fixed equals team.replace Habs, Leafs. And now, right, we can print fixed, and we'll see the go Leafs go version. Whereas, right, the original one still says go Habs go. So just take a minute and add this example to your notes. Okay, so I've added that to the note here. Feel free to use mine if it looks close to the one that you added. Okay, and that brings us to the count method. So really, the count method just returns the number of times string X appears in the parent string without overlaps, right? So if, for example, if we were looking for the string AA in this string, which has 8 A's, right, then we would have some overlaps, right? There could be a lot of AAs depending on whether or not you're counting the first AA the same as the second AA and so forth, right, as different. But for this method, it does not include that. So let's type in a few things in the terminal here. So we'll start with this first one. We'll cut and paste this, and we're going to count how many times we find at in cat hats. And of course, there's 2 of them, right? There's AT here and there's AT here. Oops. Okay, let's try the second one now when we have all these A's, right? How many AAs do we have? Well, AA, 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 AA. In other words, there's 4 sets of double A's, right, in there. Whereas if we have one less A, right, now we only have 3, right, because there's one stranded at the end. And of course, if we're just counting single A's, then we have 7 of them. Okay, and so the last methods that we're going to look at really quickly are the upper and lower methods. And really, you've used lower once or twice already in some assignments, and that's not new. So really, all these do is change the case, right, of to upper or lower letters. So if we want to change the word black to all uppercase, then right, what we could do is use the upper method and tack that straight on to the string, and we get the uppercase version of black. Okay, so I've added a little note on that. Let's finish up with example 5. Example 5 says, remove all spaces and change uppercase letters to lowercase for the phrase, don't worry, it's just me, lol. So this is the solution here. And I want to talk about a few things that are going on in this example. First of all, let's type it out. So we'll call this example 5. Okay, well, really, removing spaces, self-assignment. Okay, so let's begin by setting the variable x to this string. Okay, don't use escape. You have to remember to use escape characters here. Don't worry, it's, again, just me, lol. There we go. Okay, and in the next line, what I've got written here is x equals x dot replace. So this is kind of like the statements where you've taken a total, right? You've done a running total. You've set total equal to itself plus something else. So if you want to kind of get around this whole problem of strings being immutable, you could always reassign, right, the string to the new value, right? You could assign the string, the same string, to the changed value of the string, right? So x.replace, this is going to give us a new string, but if we plug that into x, then we'll lose what x had before, which is this, and have the replaced version, okay? So let's type it. So x equals x.replace. And what we're going to do is have the old string be a space and the new string be nothing, be an empty string. So what this really does, it looks through and it finds every space and replaces it with nothing. Okay, so this actually is how you remove all spaces, or remove really any character that you want from a string. Just replace that character with nothing. Okay. And now notice in the next line, we take x and reassign it to the lowercase version of x. Now we could actually just, instead of writing a new line here, we could actually just put it straight onto the end of this dot lower. And that means that after it's done replacing, that string will then be converted all to lowercase. And this is actually a little better than what I have here because it's more efficient and less repetitive. So let's finish this off by typing print x. We'll comment out the rest of these examples. And then this should work. If we press F5, we should see, there we go, right? There's the string with all spaces removed and all uppercase letters converted to lowercase. So that finishes the lesson. You can now go to Replit and work on 0.8 sections D through G. Good luck.